This is Bill Markley of the Licking County Records and Archives Department, and I'm talking with Judge John Spahr. It's April 22nd, 2014. And Judge Spahr, where were you born and where did you spend your childhood?
I was born in Newcastle, Indiana, and spent a lot of my childhood in Indiana. Moved around various towns, Indianapolis, Bluffton, Muncie. And then in the 8th grade I moved to Kettering, Ohio, and went to finished junior high and high school at Kettering Fairmount. And from there I went to Miami University and graduated from there in 1961. And then from there to the Ohio State University Law School and graduated from there in 1964.
Okay. When did you first get interested in the law?
In Bluffton, Indiana, when I was in about the 5th grade. My parents had a friend who was a lawyer, and he was really a neat guy, and I got interested from then on.
Was there any particular area of law that in law school or afterwards you became interested in?
I kind of knew that I would be moving to a smaller community, such as Bluffton, and so kind of a general practice, but I always in law school enjoyed criminal law and did a lot of that practice once I came here to Newark.
Okay. How did you end up getting to Licking County?
Through interviews at Ohio State, law firms would come to the university and interview prospective hirees at the law school, and I interviewed a firm called McDonald, Robinson, McDonald, and a number of other firms, but eventually chose this one. And in those days, lawyers had their choice of jobs. That's not true today.
That's what I've heard.
It's a little tougher out there.
Okay. So were you in private practice for a while here?
Yes, I went with the firm and I was in private practice for 15 years before I got appointed to the municipal bench.
Oh, okay. And then you ran for the position of common pleas judge. Was that in 1983?
1982.
82, okay.
Yeah, I was appointed municipal court in 1979, had to run immediately for the unexpired term, and then skipped a year and then had to run for the full term, and that was 81. And then in 1982 I didn't have to, but I chose to run for an open spot on common pleas court because Winston Allen, who was the then common pleas judge, had to retire. He couldn't run again because of age limits. Judges have age limits.
Okay. What was it like running for office in either case? Was that a pretty different sort of experience for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. And one thing in Licking County is either the second or third largest county in the state, so there's a lot of territory. Mm-hmm. And but you get to meet a lot of people. The worst part of campaigning, of course, is raising money. Judges can't do it personally. You have to have a committee to do it for you, so you've got to assign that basically to somebody to assist you. And interestingly enough, Greg Frost was my campaign manager in all of my campaigns running for judge. And then he subsequently got appointed to my municipal court position after I got elected to common pleas.
How did municipal court compare to common pleas court? Was it more misdemeanors at municipal court?
Yeah, municipal court is first of all, it's traffic court for one, and also misdemeanors. And you have a lot of driving under the influence cases, shoplifting, things of that nature, and then traffic court. And you also have arraignments for people who have been arrested, incarcerated, and then you have to set bail for them.
Was there anything in your background or in your education that you thought prepared you especially well for being a judge?
My practice was general, and I did a lot of the trial work for the firm I worked for. Matter of fact, I did most of it, so that was beneficial. Having practiced a lot in municipal court, having done a lot of jury trials both in municipal court and common police court.
What would you say, maybe there wasn't such a thing, but if there was, what was a typical day like as a, say, a common pleas court judge?
Common police court's a lot different from municipal court. Municipal court is a high volume court. You have a lot of cases that go through. Common police court is handle the felonies and the major civil cases. So it's a little bit slower paced, if you will, but the trials are longer and usually more complex, and it's just different.
Okay. And as common pleas judge, were most of your cases in the old West courtroom?
Well, I initially started in the East courtroom, which was assigned to Judge Winston Allen, and was there trying cases, and Judge Laughlin, Neil Laughlin, was in the other court, the West Court. And when he retired, then I would then be the senior judge, so I moved over to the West courtroom, and after Judge Laughlin retired, Greg Frost, I believe he was elected at that time, and he moved into the East courtroom.
Okay. I think I found a quote of yours about how impressive the West courtroom is, and I haven't been in too many courtrooms myself, but have you ever seen any others either around the state or elsewhere that are comparable?
Only federal courts.
Oh.
That some of the federal courts are comparable, but none better. And it is one of the most beautiful courtrooms in this part of the country, let alone Ohio.
Yeah, I was really struck when I first saw it. I didn't know if it was unusual or not, but okay. Either as municipal or common pleas court judge, did you ever, or in hindsight, notice any particular trends in the kinds of cases that were coming up, or did there seem to be an increase in certain kinds of criminal cases or a decrease or anything
In
like
the
that?
criminal area, drug cases became prevalent, especially in common pleas court. And drugs and alcohol were involved in almost every criminal case you had. But that was a big change. And another big change over the years, and maybe the biggest, was the influx of females into the practice of law. When I went to law school, there were only 3 girls, 3 females in my class. And interestingly enough, all 3 of them graduated, whereas 2/3 of the guys that were in my class didn't quite make it. But they all made it. And now I believe law schools are pretty close to 50-50. And in some cases, there are more females than there are males. And that also reflected in the number of attorneys that were practicing before you. So a lot more females.
Okay. Are there any particular cases that especially stand out in your memory?
Well, any common pleas court judge that had aggravated murder trials with death penalty specifications, those you remember. And unfortunately, Licking County had a few of those, not as many as over in Franklin County, but we had a number of cases, and some of which are tried by what's called a 3-judge panel. So you sit on a panel with 2 other judges when the defendant has waived a jury trial, and the judges make the decisions regarding both the guilt and then the penalty phase if the individual is found guilty. So those you remember.
Mm-hmm. Okay. As a judge, you would have seen, and as a criminal lawyer, you would have seen a lot of, I guess one would say, the bad side of human nature. Did it ever affect your outlook on the world in general or people, or were you able to stay fairly detached?
I think I was able to stay somewhat detached. To say you're not affected by some of this would, yes, you are affected by it, but not to the extent that you can't do your job. I've had some attorneys that actually decided they couldn't handle some of the criminal cases, some of the sexual abuse cases involving young children. They just didn't want to do them, and didn't feel that they could handle those. Yeah, you're somewhat affected by that.
And did you have a sort of a legal philosophy that may have developed or stayed the same over time?
Well, interestingly enough, when I first went on the common pleas bench, you get asked to make some speeches, and since you may be running for office again, you take advantage of that opportunity. And I developed a speech that I gave regarding sentencing, and as part of that speech at the end, I usually took a survey of the people that I was speaking to, and one of the things I wanted to find out were what are some of the characteristics that you want a judge to have, and I asked them to make a list of 3, and almost without fail, overwhelmingly, the response was, we want judges who are fair and honest. And obviously you want to be fair, you want to be honest. People assume that you're going to know the law. People assume that you're going to be up on that. But they want fair treatment, and they want an honest day in court. Even the people that know they're guilty, they want a fair shake. So I kind of adopted that as not necessarily my motto, but trying to strive for that.
Okay. One thing Judge Frost talked about when I spoke with him was he and I think he said some of the other judges who were in the county at the same time worked at making sure you're able to tackle the caseloads and prevent a big backlog, and at the same time keeping plea bargains to a minimum. Is that how you remember the way things work?
It kind of changes over the years depending upon the prosecutor that's in office. When Judge Laughlin and I were on the common pleas bench together, we had a prosecutor who decided that he was not going to plea bargain at all. There would be no plea bargaining. The defendant would either plead guilty to the indictment as handed down, or there would be a trial. And as a result of that, Judge Laughlin and I had an decided increase in jury trials, because sometimes the prosecutor over-indicted, and therefore he wouldn't reduce it, so you went to trial. And you had a lot of not guilty verdicts, and you had a lot of guilty to lesser included offenses. And after a period of time, he decided that maybe that was not the way to go, and that policy was changed. But yes, the judges try to consistently keep their docket up, and I think Licking County judges have done a very good job of that. But you don't want to have what's called the rocket docket either. You don't want to rush things through, and that's not fair. But you certainly don't want delays.
Okay. On a kind of different tangent, did you ever encounter anybody who, encounter somebody as a judge and then later learn that they really sort of turned their life around from getting in trouble with the law? Did that ever come up for you?
Yes, more than you can imagine, but maybe not as much as you hope by the same token. But there have been individuals that you've sentenced to prison, and they will come back in and say, thank you. My life was in a downward spiral, and I wasn't listening to anybody, and you finally said, the day of reckoning is here, and you're going to go to prison. We're not going to tolerate this. And they would say, I learned my lesson, and I don't want to ever go back. And a lot of them have been able to do that. And sometimes you can fashion a sentence in such a way that you don't destroy the individual, that you don't take away their integrity, what little they have left sometimes. And sometimes, probation is an appropriate way of doing that, timed with going into drug rehab or counseling. Some of them are terrible managers of their money because they've had no guidance. They get in over their head, and then they get in trouble, and their way out is to steal. And unfortunately, that's not a good way to deal with it. So if you can get them into counseling, that works a lot better.
Were you able to fashion those sentences based on what you found out about the defendant during the trial and or what their criminal history was oftentimes? Is that how you could make that basis?
Yes, you have a probation department that prepares what's known as a pre-sentence investigation report, called a PSI. And you get information from that pre-sentence investigation report, and it's extremely helpful in knowing what their background is, what their education is, and what their prior record may be, because that's extremely important in knowing how to sentence somebody.
Okay. Any other vivid memories or stories that you can remember from your time as a judge? Anything that stands out?
Oh, there are a lot of things that come to mind. There's some funny things that happen in court. One of the talks I gave at a Rotary Club, when I had indicated that I was stepping down, I told about a little boy who was about 5 years old, and he had been sexually abused. And when they're 5 years of age, the judge has to determine whether they're competent to testify, whether they know right from wrong, whether they can tell the truth, can they explain things verbally. And I asked him, his name, his address. He was in kindergarten, did he know his teacher, and things like that. And I asked him if he knew what a lie was. He said he did. And what the truth is, he said he did. And we went through that. He was really cute. And then I said, well, do you know where you are? Thinking that he would say, yes, I'm in a courtroom. And he kind of looked at me very quizzically and said, yes, I do. And I said, well, where are you? And he said, as he leaned forward, he said, I'm right here. And I turned to the lawyers and I said, 5-year-old 1, judge 0. It was so cute. It was so obvious that he understood what was going on.
Yeah, he got a realistic view of things.
Yeah, very pragmatic.
Yeah, pragmatic.
Very literal. And so I determined that yes, indeed, he was competent to testify. And I asked that the lawyers not question whether I was competent to continue on. But everybody got a laugh, and it was kind of sad because the individual who had abused him was sitting in court at the defense table right in front of him. So, but he handled it well and got through the trial well too. So, but some things like that happen that you remember. Probably also one of the most memorable cases, other than the aggravated murder with death penalty jury trial, was a trial that came out of Marne, Ohio. I don't know if you know where Marne is.
Along 16.
Yeah, along 16. They had a flood out there, and a number of families were just decimated by this flood. We had 2, what they call 100-year rainfalls within basically a 2-week period, and 2 streams overflowed and flooded them out, and they alleged that it was caused by a railroad bed that had insufficient culverts, which acted more or less as a dam, and the water rushed, and these culverts couldn't handle it, and then it backwashed, and it just flooded these people. Some of them lost everything, the trial took over a month to try. There were, I believe, initially 44 different families that had joined together to file suit. And you remember a trial that's that long, and it, I thought, was handled quite capably by all the lawyers involved, and I think the families got a satisfactory result. Not all of them recovered because some of them actually lived in a floodplain, so they weren't going to recover.
Was this against the railroad because of the nature of the embankment? Because
of the insufficient, undersized culverts that the jury determined that they should have known that they couldn't handle water of this nature, and that they were negligent. So they awarded damages to those people.
Okay.
So, kind of interesting, but not punitive damages. They just awarded compensatory damages.
Oh, okay. Does the judge determine?
No, that's up to the jury.
Oh.
The judge gives them the law, and they make a decision as to what the facts are.
Oh, okay.
And judges historically have said, I'll tell you what the law is, you the jury, you decide the facts.
Okay. How has life been since being a judge?
It's great. Retirement is a lot less stressful. I guess you always know that the job is stressful, and some days more stressful than others, and some of us have had to endure death threats and threats to your family and the like, which is not a pleasant thing to do. My way of dealing with that was that usually after work I would don my running shoes and go run on the bike path or some other place in preparations for some races and vent my frustration that way.
Interesting.
So, but now that I've retired, I'm playing a lot more golf, still running, and enjoying life in general, and travel, and life is good.
Good. And very active in Rotary, I hear.
Very active in Rotary and some other activities in the community.
Okay. What are some of those, if you don't mind?
Right now we've got a situation out at Buckeye Lake. I live at Buckeye Lake, live right on the lake, and there's some activity as to the dam restoration, or a possible restoration of the dam, and I'm involved in a committee dealing with that, for one thing.
Was that originally built for the canal system?
Yes, the Erie,
Okay.
Erie Canal. It was built as a feeder lake.
Okay, and does the dam date back pretty?
It
Pretty
dates
far.
back into the 1800s. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Have you noticed if Licking County has changed substantially in any way since you've been here that you can think of, or seems to have stayed pretty much the same?
It's stayed pretty much the same. It's gotten a little bit larger. I think probably the biggest change has been in the western part of the county and the Pataskala, the New Albany, and up north in the Johnstown area. Population has increased there, I think probably more so than anywhere else. So the demographics have changed to that degree.
And that seems to be affected by being close to Columbus and
Yes.
becoming kind of bedroom
Yeah.
communities. Okay. Okay. The last question I had before giving you a chance to add anything else was, do you have any advice for people who are interested in going into a legal career at this point? You mentioned how the job market's a little different from when you went in, but is there anything else?
Yeah, the job market is totally different from when I graduated from law school. As I said, students that graduated and passed the bar had a choice of jobs, maybe 3 or 4. And now, students that pass the bar may not even have a job offer. And they may have to hang out their own shingle and be on their own. The biggest thing is, if you want to practice law, is anticipate that it may be difficult, and do your homework early, and maybe do some networking and try to find somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody and have an in. And some people go into government work. When I graduated, I had absolutely no idea that I was ever going to be a judge. I mean, that was probably the last thing on my mind. I wanted to go to a smaller town with a smaller firm and have a general practice, so I kind of knew what I wanted to do. And I think that's helpful. And one of the things that my high school required us to do before we graduated from high school was, if you indicated that you knew what you wanted to do, you had to go and interview, in my case, a lawyer, and have them give you some advice on, on which college to go to, perhaps which law school to go to, and get some advice. And I would recommend that anybody that wants to go into the practice of law that they do that. And maybe, go in and talk to a judge that can give them some advice. But know what you're getting into is important.
Okay.
One thing that I would add that I'm kind of proud of, that after I went to the common pleas bench, one of the things I did was I started having a monthly meeting in my chambers at 7 o'clock in the morning on I think the first Wednesday of every month, and I invited all of the judges of Licking County, regardless of their politics, regardless of which court they were in, the municipal judges, all the other common pleas judge, the probate juvenile, and the domestic relations judge. And it's a good way of keeping on top of what's going on in the various courts, because otherwise you really don't have much opportunity to see the other judges. And it was a good way to keep those lines of communication open. And I think over the years we developed a lot of collegiality among the judges. And there were occasionally some elections that individuals would have to undergo and butt heads against each other, and this was a way of bringing some of them back and a little bit closer. When you break bread together, it makes a little difference. We'd always have coffee, and somebody got assigned to bring the donuts. So we did that, and I'm happy to report that they are now continuing to do that. That still goes on, and I occasionally go to those meetings too and keep abreast of what's going on.
Good. Do you remember around when you started establishing that?
Yeah, shortly after 1983, when I first went on the bench over there. Well, it might have been a little bit later than that. Yeah, it was a little bit later than that, because I don't think the Neil Hoffman was still there when they started doing that. So it would have been a little bit later.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No?
Okay.
Lincoln County is a nice place to be. I enjoyed my relationship, especially with Judge Laughlin and Judge Frost, and then Judge Marceline, who succeeded Greg. So we had really good times and good working relationships as county police judges.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Judge Spahr.
Okay.
I guess I'll sign off now then.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
It's kind of fun to